he spoke earlier about the changes of experience that the Ashwapati is going through. It's like an oscillation, he says, between earth and heaven. And gradually there is this interplay of light and darkness. Slowly there grew in him the glory of the integer of his soul. The soul is an integer. It is never a broken thing, but it is there in all of us. But pushed so far into the background, covered by so many layers of ignorance and unconsciousness, that it's only now and then there is a spark, there is a light that manifests itself. Gradually, this is replaced by a more and more continuous expression of light, widening the mortal mind's half look on things, bridging the gap between man's force and fate. Slowly, the division in the nature, which is there in all of us, is becoming more and more the unit, you could say that being is becoming more and more one. So that the divided parts of our nature are being joined into one consciousness. When this is there, at last was one, a firm spiritual poise. So that this rising and falling, this movement between darkness and light is slowly replaced by a more continuous and steady spiritual consciousness. At last was one, a firm spiritual poise, a constant lodging in the eternal's realm, a safety in the silence and the ray. It's a beautiful line, a safety. Otherwise, we are touched by the grace, we open to the light, we turn our backs after some time to that same light, we fall back into darkness and therefore into pain, suffering, ignorance. We cry out and we say, where is the divine in my hour of need? The divine is always there, but I have turned away from him. This is slowly being replaced by a continuous lodging in the divine consciousness. The divine doesn't go away, we move away from him. But this is a continuous lodging in the eternal's realm, a safety, then only we are safe. We ask for protection, we ask for help. We ask for help only when we are in need, in trouble, and then we forget about the divine. We carry on with our normal everyday state of not just activities, but our very commonplace, ordinary consciousness. And this is why this is a movement of back and forth, rising and falling. But this is gradually replaced by a constant lodging in the eternal's realm, a safety in the silence and the ray, a settlement in the immutable. It's unchanging, completely settled. His heights of being lived in the still self. The higher consciousness, which is open to light, which aspires for truth, constantly is really turned upwards. His mind could rest on a supernal ground. The mind is moving towards that which is above the mind, towards something higher than the mind. And look down on the magic and the play where the God-child lies on the lap of night and dawn. That is when the mind that is always open to the light sees that this play of darkness and light, of ignorance and on the one hand of ignorance and suffering and failure, and on the other hand, the opening to truth and light, is really a play. We fall, we fail, we get hurt. It becomes the starting point for a renewal of our aspiration, because we are not for a very long time capable of holding on constantly to the divine connection. So that mind now has this realization, this understanding. Otherwise, the mind is full of questions. It is normally full of doubts. It is not stable. But if the mind is resting on a spiritual light, then it recognizes the play of the spirit, and where there is an interplay of light, night and dawn, where the God child is the evolving psychic being that does not all the time allow itself to be touched by the greater fields of experience and light and truth, because it enjoys its ignorance. In us there is an attachment to our own ignorance, our own error, our own lower nature. This is part of the game. It is as if the being, the divine, in us also has plunged into the darkness, and as if it is rolling in the mud, until the moment comes when it has enough of this playing the mud and realizes that there is something other that we can do. The evolution towards light is not continuous. It is not, the need is not always felt. And so there is the play between darkness and light, just like the child, just like the earth herself turns to light, turns away from the light. We call the divine, we forget about the divine. This is the play. And it is as if both aspects bring us, our opportunities to bring us closer to the divine, because when we lose contact, we get hurt, we receive blows. They become again a reminder that yes, I have moved away from the divine. That is why I am in this condition. So again, I realize that I have to renew my aspiration, I have to renew my call. Because in man, in all of us, there is a sense of getting used to something. It becomes, the intensity of the aspiration is not there. I do the good things, the right things every day, I say, in such a way that I almost do it automatically. If I go for my pranam every day, I don't do it with the intensity of the pranam I would have made after I have really gone through a great suffering and I have gone to the samadhi and thanked the Lord and the Mother for the grace. But if I have not suffered, I go to the samadhi, but I don't have that intensity of the gratefulness I would otherwise have had. So it is sometimes part of it's a push. It's a kind of a reminder that we take the divine for granted. Our protection is always there and I get used to it. One of the worst things that man can do is to become used to something in the most mechanical, automatic way. You can do the finest actions in a mechanical way if you do it without the consciousness that is behind the gesture. I do a gesture, I do a puja, but if the consciousness is not fully turned to the divine, it is only a gesture, it's only a ritual, it is without value. In fact, it is almost an insult. I take the divine for granted. It's better not to do it. This is what we realize, particularly in our country, where there is a long tradition of conventional worship. Every worship has to be done as if it is for the first time. The moment you get it in a mechanical, automatic, ritualistic manner, the inner intensity is at every step diminished. You do it as something that should be done, it's a good thing, and that's all. But this is why the God child lies on the lap of night and then emerges out of night into the light. In us, we go down into the night, slowly emerge into the dawn, and the everlasting puts on time's disguise. This is the spirit in man. This is man. He is the everlasting. He has entered into the framework of time between birth and death until he realizes, I am not born from darkness, I am born from light. That is my origin. Time, which is death, which is a limit, is only a mask, a disguise. But I accept the outer aspect, the mask, to be the reality. And then I call myself mortal. I am not immortal. My relationship is much more close to mortality than to immortality. This is why we always end up with a fall, with a suffering, with a failure. But then that same suffering becomes a stronger push to rise again. But now that Ashwapati has really arrived at this much more equal and constant relationship with the ray, the light, and the silence, there is a constancy of the light. It is undisturbed. It is always quiet. So to the still heights, again that silence, he repeats it in the word still. The light, the grace, the consciousness is always there. To the still heights and to the troubled depths. In our lower nature, there is turmoil. There is hankering, there is failure, there is fall, there is disturbance. In our higher consciousness, there is a quietness, there is a peace. So, to the still heights and to the troubled depths, his equal spirit gave its vast assent. He accepted it. So this is the seeker. Whenever difficulties came to him, like in the story of the life of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, their outer life, there were innumerable difficulties of all kinds. But a poised serenity of tranquil strength, a wide unshaken look on time's unrest, faced all experience with unaltered peace. This is the yogic change, to face all experience in absolute tranquility. We don't need to be told, we have been shown the examples. The quietness, the strength that even when Sri Aurobindo was in prison and he was being tried in the jail, even the judge commented, have you seen his eyes? They seem to look at eternity. He's untroubled by all the turmoil, all the possibility, even the possibility of being hanged. It didn't seem to touch him at all, because his consciousness was not there on the surface, not pushed around like Mother describes our surface consciousness being pushed around like a cork on the waters, on the waves, here and there. I'm at the mercy of every state of experience, now this, now that. He was in a state of constant quietness because he had found the supreme presence in all things. and therefore indifferent to the sorrow and delight, untempted by the marvel and the call, indifferent to the sorrow and delight, this is easier to understand, but untempted by the marvel, by the beauty and the joy, that is so thrilling, the beautiful experiences of light. Even there, to experience the joy without being in any way excited, constantly to remain in a state of equanimity, of peace. Sri Aurobindo has made it very, very clear that is the basic quality for the yogic progress. To be in a state of constant quietness. On that basis, like a foundation, like our base, our foundation has to be stable, has to be steady. Then the structure will stand. Otherwise, the structure shakes. Our nature is always shaking. Excited, happy, unhappy, moving here, there, and that is why it takes so long for us to even move forward, because every forward movement is followed by a backward step, or sitting down to rest on our laurels and think, yes, I've done something wonderful, I've become special, and then we forget that there is so much more to do. So this is the whole problem of man. Man has been there on the earth for millions of years. He hasn't basically changed. He's just the same. Fundamentally, the change has to be absolutely on the foundation of quietness, of peace. Then the new building of a new consciousness can really take place. Indifferent to the sorrow and delight, untempted by the marvel and the call, immobile it beheld the flux of things. The change and the quietness. These are the two things that are there in our lives. There is something that is always changing. Life changes, circumstances change, we change. The whole world around us is at a state of constant change. It is upheld by a constancy of a divine grace that supports all, that upholds all. We forget about it, but it doesn't forget. It is there. And whether we remember to thank the grace or not, it remains always there. It is this that gives to man that inner dimension. If I can live within, and that is again another condition, live within. You take all outer experiences as an opportunity to live within. Calm and apart, supported all that is. His spirit's stillness helped the toiling world. It's like the still center of a whirling globe. There's something that is always moving, but the center, it doesn't move. We have none. We don't have to look far. You look at his photographs and you see that quietness in his face. He's a person who has the ability not only to write the most marvelous poetry or go through the most painful experiences, whether they are physical or social or for that matter psychological, because he has taken on himself the burden of humanity. It doesn't really affect that inner quietness, because he knows in the end the ultimate purpose for this whole play of change. He is there at the beginning, his support is there in the middle, he is the goal to which all things move. And therefore that stillness, that calm remains. is always calm. Inspired by silence and the closed eyes sight. It's the closed eyes sight. It's an unusual phrase. He does not depend on the relationship which we have with the world around us, which is based on our surface sense perception. I see this, so I understand it according to my vision. I hear that, and my understanding or my preference is based on what my ear or my touch or my eyes tell me. Whereas he sees with a deeper perception. It is not based on the surface sense perception. And that is one of the first, we might say, rewards that the Jnana Yogi has. He does not rely on the outer perception. What you see with the physical eyes is not the truth. There is an inner vision. Behind the physical, there is a reality. That reality is not perceived if your consciousness is unable to perceive it. Just like when we see things, our sight is controlled by our surface eyes. Behind my eyes is my mind. My mind has its own opinion and its judgment. Behind my mind is my perception, my intelligence, my whole inner development. We all see the same things outwardly, more or less, the same things. Our opinions and our relationship with the world is not the same. Because each one sees things according to his standpoint, according to his ego, according to his preference, according to his understanding. It's play of all fragmented and partial connection with reality because we see only the surface. And that's one reason why perhaps in the ancient world, very often in certain cultures, for instance in the Greek culture, the prophet, the seer, the true poet was often represented as being physically blind. They did not see the outer world. That is why they could see. They were not distracted by the surface vision. They could see from within. And this is called Satya Drishti. To see not from the surface, to see from within. You can't see from within unless you become that. That sight is knowledge by identity. I live that experience, then only I see it. Then only I know it. Otherwise I don't. I don't know the world until I become the world. I don't know anything until I become that thing. Otherwise, whatever relationship I have with any experience, an object, a person, an event, is dependent on my personal approach, which is so limited and of which we are so sure. So, it is this foundation of quietness and peace that is there behind the world of change, which is toiling, is struggling to rise in spite of inertia, in spite of error, in spite of falsehood. Inspired by silence and the closed eyes sight, his force could work with a new luminous art on the crude material from which all is made. So we realize that there is our ordinary notion that somebody who is very strong or who is very really efficient, who does things a lot, he enters into the field of action, he does something with a great deal of energy. But the person who is really the one who controls the action is not outwardly moving around, running around, but he is there seated within, quiet. That is the foundation. So knowledge and quietness are the ones that really help us to achieve something. The knowledge of the real truth, not the outward vitality and action and dynamic movements, and they seem to be very dramatic and very, we can say, admirable. The person who doesn't say anything, who doesn't do outwardly anything, like Sri Aurobindo did not come out of his room for so many years. He was at the helm of the affairs of the war, second war, of the nation. He's controlling without moving. He can project the forces of consciousness. They can be really, they can enter into much more powerful, untroubled manner they can act. Whereas if I do something, my ego is there, my ignorance also is there, my little ability also is there, and all these things are so, you might say, unruly. So nothing is properly done. Any work that is done, as Mother keeps on repeating, has to be done quietly. It is then that the consciousness can really manifest through whatever mind, life, body performs. That silence, that quietness, that stability has to be the foundation. So here, his force could work with a new luminous art. Art is manner. Yeah. On the crude material from which all is made. The material that has come out of the world of inertia, of matter, of ignorance and unconsciousness. They have their laws, they have their nature. Their nature is resistance. Their nature is to be unwilling to change. And the insistence of the pressure of consciousness that will force the world of resistance to stop being resistant, to open to light. So this is the interplay, the force from a higher descent of consciousness, the resistance from below. And this is the story of the whole human nature, earthly nature, these two forces, that which comes down as a pressure from above, that which resists from below, because from below there is not necessarily always an aspiration. There is inertia. There is acceptance of our imperfection. We often say, I can't help it, I am like this. I can't do this, I am made this way. When that is there, when there is acceptance of defeat and failure, then this wisdom that knows how, without getting disturbed, how to turn all things, sometimes how to churn also. The pressure can be very strong. There are movements in the world, as there are often now also, periods of churning, things that are being made to emerge from the world of dirt and ignorance and ego and hostility. They have to come up to the surface so that you can, finally they can be thrown out. Like scum, they come up to the top, you have to take it and throw it out. We can't push them always down and show a world that to our nature, because this is the yoga of this change of consciousness. The soul is emerging out of the outer world of resistance. In our nature, we don't often know how to bring the soul out of the cage of ignorance. But someone who is working on it consciously, this is the yoga of Sri Aurobindo himself, he is removing the forces that have denied, that have resisted, that have sometimes a kind of very strong passive resistance also. They have to be removed by a continuous, stubborn, obstinate pressure. Because it is a very old story. The play of darkness did not begin yesterday. We have our origins in darkness, we have our origins in light, and the pressure of light will finally have to remove the resistance of darkness. So, this is the crude material of ignorance and inconscience, from which all is made, and the refusal of inertia's mass. It doesn't fight back, it just resists. That is the difficulty. And the grey front of the world's ignorance. It's a collective state, not just the individual. There's a whole universal collective state. This is the lower hemisphere. Sri Aurobindo speaks in the Life Divine of two hemispheres. At the universe, if you compare it to a globe, there is the lower hemisphere, which is made of the forces that are born and are more closely connected with the original darkness, inconscience, ignorance. And they culminate in the ego, in the collective ego, in the individual ego. And that becomes something that is solidified. The ego becomes a very solid, strong center. And there is the pressure from above that comes down. So, on the crude material of which all is made, and the refusal of inertia's mass, and the grey front of the world's ignorance, and nescient matter, and the huge error of life. Ignorant matter. Matter's strength is its ignorance, its inertia. Life, there are forces. And all these forces are not turned to the light, to progress, to evolution. They are filled with passion, with desire, the main force in the vital world, the push, the drive that really takes us constantly in the world of action, into the world of action, is desire. And the desire is for self-satisfaction and not for something that would like to open to a higher light or a higher consciousness. I want simply my own personal satisfaction. This is where the error comes in. Without life energy, nothing can be done. But if this energy is turned always and or primarily toward the personal self-satisfaction, we get attached to this. Attachment leads to suffering. This has to be cut. This has been the solution of the Buddha: give up desire. Give up desire, give up connection with life as much as possible, retire into silence, retire into some kind of inner stillness. It does not remove the problem. You turn your back to the problem. You say, I don't want to be disturbed by this. The problem remains. And so Sri Aurobindo's solution is not that. If there is this problem, it has to be worked on. It is there in my vital nature, it is there in all vital nature. The vital doesn't like discipline. It does not like to be trained. Without the vital, there is no action possible. But the vital has to be tamed, has to be taught, has to be trained. This is not easy. To control the horses, you get the image, symbolic image of the Lord controlling the chariot in the battle. He did not fight Sri Krishna, but he controlled the horses. So he could control the vital energies. And so he could guide the Pandavas to victory. But the other side was wealthier, was stronger, outwardly, was more likely to win, so they had a greater problem with their egos, and ultimately they failed. So, then now another image. As a sculptor chisels a deity out of stone, he slowly chipped off the dark envelope. Ashwapati realizes that in this world of matter and resistance, there is a presence. There is a divine presence deep inside, the involved hidden presence. It has to be made to be brought out. And this, and only this, can change our life, our outward life, our external, physical, vital, mental life can be transformed if we permit that inner presence that is hidden within to come out into the open and become the guide and become the leader and the teacher. Just like a sculptor who takes a piece of stone and recognizes that within that stone there is a possibility of a wonderful, beautiful image that is hiding inside the stone. But he has to, in order to bring out that image, remove all the other outside parts of the stone that come in the way. He has to chip off, he has to hammer, he has to beat, he has to chisel. All these things have to be done. And that is what our journey through life is. It's full of blows and hammerings and all the things that slowly purify and shape us into becoming expressions of the inner divine. It is not enough to say, I am the child of the mother. I am the child of the mother, yes, but really am I? If I were truly a child of the mother, would I always do and say the things I do? In my outer behavior? In my outer nature? At every step we betray her. Because these elements that are contrary to the divine are also part of us. And we have to constantly keep on chiseling and hammering and purifying. This is a big chunk of this in the book of the Synthesis of Yoga. There is the yoga of self-perfection, of which a portion is the yoga of self-purification. We have to purify our nature. This is the great experiment. The divine has come down into the darkness so that the darkness can slowly recognize the light that is there inside. Within us the light is there. The divine is there. The grace and the mother are there. The rest also is there. The problem is that there's a great deal of things that come in the way. And it's a slow, long process. One after the other, we have to remove all the things that come in the way. So he slowly chipped off the dark envelope, line of defense of nature's ignorance. Nature is fighting back. And what is her way of fighting back? Simply ignorance, refusal, inertia, a passive resistance. That is also there. The lower nature, so strong is that often there were yogis who say it is not possible to change. Your soul is pure, your nature is not cut off connection with the world of life and body. Turn only to the light, your higher part, even your higher mind and your aspiration, and concentrate only on that. The rest cannot be changed. It's like Vivekananda saying, you cannot straighten a dog's tail. This is the Vedantic view. But Sri Aurobindo says, yoga of transformation. This ignorance, this nature is also part of the divine plan. We have to go through these difficulties because in them is the possibility of a new expression of the divine. In the lowest is hidden the highest. So, this is the illusion and mystery of the inconscient. It's a beautiful line. Inconscience is, as the word itself contains the word conscious. In the inconscience is hidden the consciousness. It is there. But that's what inconscience is illusion. But it's a very, very convincing illusion. So powerful, so frightening sometimes that you say, I cannot change. The pressure of the darkness is too heavy on me. Therefore, in the next line, he uses the word black pall. The pall is the dark cloth that covers the coffin. The sense of death, the sense of darkness, the sense of failure. But in that world of so-called darkness, in whose black pall the eternal wraps his head, the divine is hidden in the world of death. And this is what we shall read if we read that far in Book 11, when Savitri realizes that one whom she had known as death and night, the sum of all glory, was concentrated in his limbs. Death is a mask. Death is a shadow. The light is splendidly there behind, but we see the mask. We can't bear so much light. Therefore, that divine light is hidden behind the mask. We have to change our consciousness, our vision, and not be really convinced only by surface appearances. But we are so shallow. We live on the surface. So the surface is all that exists for us. So the eternal stays hidden until we are ready to discover him. Until we make that experience that Mother made by plunging into the very heart of the inconscience, to find in that very bottom of the inconscient, which she said was most hard and rigid and narrow and stifling, almost stifled her. She says, I touched an almighty spring that cast me up forthwith into a formless, limitless vast, vibrating with the seeds of a new world. The highest worlds are hiding in the deepest darkness. So this is a spherical world. What is in the sphere, there is no beginning, there is no end. The eternal is below, the eternal is above. Man is a mental being, he divides what is high, what is low. I can't enter into the world of light because I am trapped in the world of darkness. I, with my mind, make opposites. I am small, I am not vast. I am weak and therefore undivine. I am not capable of doing something on my own because I don't have the knowledge and the consciousness. This is the intermediary stage, which is that of man, the mental man. Here is a being, Ashwapati, who is climbing out of that mental state, who is moving towards the liberation of the inner consciousness that is hidden in the darkness, in the consciousness of man. And therefore, the soul, the yoga of the soul's release. And he sees the presence in the world of extreme darkness and inconscience. So, the illusion and mystery of the inconscient, in whose black pall the eternal wraps his head, that he may act unknown in cosmic time. You see how you might yet call him a diplomat. We can also call him the divine as a being of extreme kindness. He is working unknown to us from within, slowly helping us to change. He does not really always hit us with difficulties, Sometimes he does. But at other times, gradually, through life, through time, through every experience, he gives us an opportunity to go one step further, to recognize the possibilities that are hidden deep inside ourselves. I can do better, I can move higher, I don't have to stop where I am now. I can change. If I don't finish all the development I'm capable of now, I'll start again. It's a long journey. From life to life, I move. But this is the journey of consciousness. The eternal, it does not accept death as a final, you might say, end. It's only a pause. It's only a temporary change. So this is why a splendor of self-creation from the peaks on the one hand, a transfiguration in the mystic depths from above, the splendor of the descent of consciousness, from below the transfiguration. Transfiguration is to change the less beautiful into the more beautiful, to change the more dark into something more light. It is not a complete rejection. It is, you might say, to bring out what is essentially beautiful, more glorious, luminous, which is hidden by the contrary characteristics that are part of our human nature. We can be transfigured. We can become a different manifestation because that new manifestation is waiting to emerge from within. When this happens from the depths, from below, a happier cosmic working could begin and fashion the world shape in him anew. Each individual contains the whole world. All the possibilities that are there in the universe are there in man. And so in him, in his own personal life, this yogi is going through the different states of consciousness. And you have this line at the end, God found in nature, nature fulfilled in God. Manifesting the divine in the world. The purpose of the world is to manifest the divine, the fulfillment. It is not earth and sky are not opposites. They are part of one universe. Spirit and matter, soul and body, God and nature. This is the world of nature, is the world of evolution, the Shakti. And so you have the image of the Lord, the consciousness, but the consciousness manifests itself through his Shakti. So you have Shiva and Shakti, Ishvara, Ishvari. Always it is through this Shakti that the gradual emergence manifests himself. He is there beyond. She is the one who is making him manifest. So these are the two aspects. Already in him was seen that task of power. This change was already beginning in him. It was not an easy change. Life made its home on the high tops of self, in the higher planes of his being. His soul, mind, heart became a single sun. No shadows, the shadow comes because there is a duality, a division. In him, these parts of his being, there is no hypocrisy, total sincerity, no hiding behind the excuses that the ego likes to make, justifying itself in its weaknesses. Only life's lower reaches remained dim. The lower vital, the subconscious, the unconscious had not as yet changed. the work has to be done there too. Okay.